The courtroom was unusually sunny that day. Huge windows let in glare of light, as if symbolically illuminating the truth that was about to come out. But no one, neither the judge, nor the prosecutor, nor even the invited journalists, expected that the parrot would be the main bearer of this truth. Yes, the most ordinary, green, with a bright red beak and an impudent look, as if he had long been accustomed to being the center of attention. His cage stood on a massive oak table, put there as material evidence, but already with. In the first minutes it became clear that this witness was much more than just a Vechka. Maria Arkadievna, short, a fragile woman of about 70, was sitting nearby and quietly clutching an old embroidered handkerchief in her hands. Each of her. The breath was nervous, every look anxious. Next to her was an appointed lawyer, trying to at least outwardly create a sense of calm, but she also looked confused. The case was too unusual. In the dock stood a tall man in an expensive suit and her own nephew. His face was confident, even defiant, as if he had come here as a spectator, and not as a person who was threatened with serious punishment. From time to time, he threw condescending glances at his aunt, as if assuring himself, "She is weak. She will not prove anything." The judge tapped his pen on the table, hiding his embarrassment. In his entire 20-year career, there had never been a case of someone summoning a parrot for interrogation. And yet, the matter required a non-standard approach. The bird's testimony, recorded by neighbors, was key to the unexpected turn of the investigation. The judge exhaled, adjusted his glasses, and signaled the prosecutor to begin. Imagine, the prosecutor began, that the witness who heard the crime is not a person, but a living creature capable of repeating what he heard. We cannot ignore this. We must give him the opportunity to hear him right now. Maria Arkadievna shuddered. The defendant rolled his eyes. The judge raised his eyebrows slightly, but nodded. The prosecutor's lawyer turned on the recording previously provided by the neighbors. In the silence, the parrot's hoarse but distinct voice was suddenly heard. "Don't touch your aunt. I saw everything. Don't hurt." A wave of shock swept through the hall. Up until this point, many people thought that this whole story with the parrot was just an attempt to defend himself from accusations, strange and desperate. But the recording sounded frighteningly true. There was too much fear in these intonations, as if the bird was reliving the moment. Maria Arkadievna closed her eyes, pressing her handkerchief to her face. She knew that the parrot had really heard everything. She will never forget that night. The defendant gasped and looked away, as if the sound was physically unpleasant to him. The judge looked up from his papers, and for the first time in the entire session, looked directly at the cage. And then something happened that no one assumed. The parrot spoke on its own. He shook his song, tilted his head, and croaked in a lively voice without recording. "Bad. Don't touch your aunt. I'll tell." The hall seemed to freeze. Even journalists stopped clicking cameras. No one expected that the bird would repeat the phrases right now, and so emotionally. It seemed that the parrot was directly accusing the man in the dock. The prosecutor froze with his mouth open. The defendant's lawyer became worried and stood up sharply. "I object," he shouted. "It's just an animal. It repeats random phrases." But at that moment, the parrot continued, as if he heard and understood the meaning of what was happening. "Don't hurt. Money, money." The last phrase sounded especially clear, as if the bird remembered the tone and timbre of a man's voice. The judge raised his hand, demanding absolute silence. And it came thick, heavy, as if before a thunderstorm. Maria Arkadievna whispered softly, "He repeats everything. Everything that he heard that night." The defendant lost confidence for the first time. His face stiffened, his lips turned white, and his eyes began to flicker. He understood that even if the parrot was not a person, then the coincidence of his words with the found evidence would be fatal. The judge leaned back in his chair in deep thought. He had to admit that the unbelievable sometimes turns out to be the most honest. And for the first time in this case, he felt that the truth on the arm's length, and it is pronounced not by a person, but by a small feathered creature that does not even realizes what a storm it has raised with its screams. The next day the courtroom was so crowded that it seemed even more. A little, and people will stand on the windowsills. The news about the speaking witness spread around the city faster than the materials and cases managed to get into the archives. Law students stood against the back wall, whispering to each other that this was a story that would be analyzed in exams. Journalists argued who would be the first to post a comment about the parrot on the network. Even ordinary passers-by who heard about the strange process came to see it with their own eyes. The atmosphere was thick, dense. The anticipation hung in the air, as if before the start of the performance. Only it was not a performance. It was a trial on which the fate of people depended. The judge entered with a tired step. He was clearly not happy about such attention. His gray hair was disheveled, as if he had been tossing and turning for a long time at night, trying to figure out how to conduct a case where the main witness was a bird. He took his seat, took a heavy breath, and asked to begin the hearing. Maria Arkadievna sat in the same place as yesterday, but looked even paler. She did not sleep all night thinking, did she do the right thing by bringing the parrot to court? Maybe she should have protected her nephew, as he always said, "We're family." But the memories of that night, of his screaming, threats, jolts, came back, and a wave of pain and resentment rose inside him. These memories turned out to be more honest than family ties. The nephew, on the contrary, behaved confidently or did. View. His expensive suit fit flawlessly, but something nervous appeared on his face. A slight twitch of the lips, a tremor. Fingers. The parrot's words yesterday had made a breach in his confidence. Even if the bird simply repeated what it heard, it repeated it too accurately, too accusatory. The parrot was carried out again, putting the cage on the table. The bird immediately became the center of attention, as if he felt the show continues, and all eyes are on him. He turned his head, appreciated the audience, fluffed up his feathers, and approvingly grunted, which caused a few chuckles from the back rows. The prosecutor stood up. "Witness," he stammered, as if that phrase still sounded absurd. "A parrot named Candy Wrapper is present again. Today we will try to clarify the details." The defendant's lawyer stood up abruptly. "Objection. An animal cannot be a witness in the legal sense of the word." The judge sighed. "We have already discussed this. The parrot is not a witness formally, but we will compare its uttered phrases with the available evidence. Keep going." The prosecutor approached the cage slowly, as if he was afraid to scare the bird. The bird tilted its head, shook it, and suddenly shouted loudly, "Don't touch your aunt! Don't touch her!" A noise ran through the hall at once, as if dozens of people were sucking in air at the same time. Maria Arkadievna squeezed the armrest. The defendant stiffened so sharply that his knuckles turned white. The prosecutor continued, "And what did he say? What did the man say?" The parrot fell silent for a couple of seconds. He seemed to be choosing a phrase. Then he opened his beak. "The money? Give me the money." The last word was said in a voice that resembled the voice of the defendant, rough and harsh. Journalists raised their cameras. Several spectators covered their mouths with their hands, struck by the coincidence. The defendant's lawyer turned pale, but tried to defend himself. "It's just a coincidence." The bird could hear these phrases anywhere, but the parrot seemed to decide that this was not enough. He spread his wings and added, "Don't yell at Auntie. I will tell everyone." Now there was silence in the hall, so thick that you could hear someone dropping a pen on the floor. The judge did not move. He peered intently at the bird, as if trying to understand whether it was a mechanical repetition or a wildly accurate tragic reconstruction. The prosecutor said quietly, "Mr. Judge, the words of the bird coincide with the testimony of the neighbors who heard. Fight. And with the medical report, when the day of sentencing came, the courtroom was no longer noisy as before. The people who had been arguing, joking, and crowding at the door yesterday now sat quietly, as if realizing that the moment had become too serious for curiosity. Even journalists gave up trying to catch another spectacular shot. Everyone waited with bated breath. The judge came in slowly, almost heavily, like a man who has not just a decision on his shoulders, but responsibility for a surprisingly fragile truth. He looked at the accused, then at Maria Arkadievna, and finally at the parrot that was sitting in the cage and cleaning its feathers, as if everything that was happening had nothing to do with him. The nephew looked exhausted. His confidence vanished, replaced by nervous tension. He was constantly fiddling with the sleeve of his jacket, like a man who wants to run away, but has nowhere to go. Whether he understood or not, his own words, of the rage he had once spoken, now came from the beak of a creature that did not. He knows how to lie, but only says what he hears. The judge opened the folder with the case materials. The hall froze. In the process of the hearing, he began, "Evidence was provided that we cannot ignore. Neighbors' testimony, medical report, financial documents, and sound recordings confirmed in court." He looked at the cage. What we heard from the lips, or rather, from the beak of the parrot, caused bewilderment among everyone. But his words coincide with the facts of the investigation. Fully. The nephew swallowed convulsively. Maria Arkadievna covered her mouth with her hand, trying to hold back her tears. The parrot raised his head, as if sensing silence, and said quietly, "Aunt, good aunt." These words struck the hall like an unexpected note in a symphony. A simple phrase, warm, alive. And there was so much honesty in her that Maria Arkadievna's fingers trembled. The judge, ignoring the sighs around him, pronounced a sentence. The accused is found guilty of extortion, threats and harm to the health of citizen Maria Arkadievna. On the basis of the article, he listed the legal formulations, but the meaning was already clear to everyone. The verdict is final. At that moment, the defendant jumped up, as if he wanted to shout something, justify himself, blame the parrot, fate, whoever. But the words never came out. He just sank helplessly back down on the bench, as if the air had come out of him at once. Maria Arkadievna began to cry quietly, not loudly, not theatrically, but quietly relieved. She cried not from joy that her nephew would be imprisoned, but from the fact that for the first time in a long time she was heard. They really heard. The parrot said again, "It's all right! It's all right!" And it sounded so sincere, as if he understood more than a simple pet should understand. The judge hit the gavel, and the trial ended. But no one was in a hurry to get up. Everyone seemed to be trying to realize that the little green witness had helped uncover a truth that people had long been afraid to admit. An incident that began as an absurdity has become a story where justice has found a voice, albeit a feathered one. M.